like, I'm not doing 3 people's job.
White collar jobs wiped out.
Companies will be flat.
And then I panic. I shouldn't be using Google.
Your impact. HR teams now have
To like, I'm afraid of it.
Price versus value.
All right, welcome everybody to Silicon Zombies, where we bring you the best brains from the Bay. Awesome. Well, we get to demystify emerging technology with all sorts of delicious brains on the panel here today. So thanks to TechLAB for having us. Wonderful group. By the way, if you want to check us out on YouTube, where we put all of this great content. Well, excited to have everybody here today because, frankly, AI, it's touching all different parts of business and relationships, and this technology is having a pretty profound impact in HR. So we're calling this specific show the Human Algorithm because we get to figure out how to work together and use technology to get to the next level. So without any further ado, we've got Kate Clark, we've got Jacqueline, Laura, and then Abdullah as well. So perhaps we can do some short introductions, and then we'll light the candle and get things rocking and rolling. Please.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Kate. I actually came down here from Seattle and been at Microsoft for 9 years in sales, marketing, and services and business operations roles. Had a little bit of a couple of those were crossovers there, and then I've been for the last 11 years various roles at a staffing company, JeffreyM Consulting. So we do talent acquisition and staffing for kind of the non-tech for tech. We work with Microsoft, Meta, SAP Concur, some other large companies here heard of, but more recently we've been working with more companies in the startup space, some blockchain companies up locally in Seattle, and another healthcare startup tech. So we're kind of seeing how we can help out some of those smaller companies.
Great.
So
awesome. Jacqueline, please.
Hi, I'm Laura Burgess.
Laura, yeah.
I am an HR practitioner. I've worked in consulting for early stage startups for a little over 20 years now, generally in technology and life sciences, but across the board. I've also been employed by many startups. Currently kind of taking a break, so I'm head of HR at a commercial lending institution. That's my job right now, and I'm local here in the Bay Area.
Excellent. Jackie, please.
Yeah, I'm Jackie Breslin. I work for Trinet. We're a professional employer organization. I'm the director of HR consulting. And I have the opportunity to work with lots of interesting startup companies and medium-sized to small, doing org dev, learning and development, compliance consulting. So like never adulting, for sure.
Hey everybody, my name is Abdullah. I'm the founder of Smart HR. We are a boutique agency and we help companies transform their digital footprint by automating different workflows, by incorporating AI, and also a bunch of other stuff. But for myself personally, we've been in business for about 5 years, but I was a small business owner before. I had about 40 employees, so I saw the nuance and the detail that went into operating business. So after I was bought out of my business, I decided, hey, let's get into HR full time and try to help other companies kind of build their operations, but also scale in a very methodical way while having a lean footprint. So I've been doing that now for about 5 years, and we're here today.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Abdullah, you mentioned a little bit about workflow automation, and there's a lot of different pieces to that pie, right? We've got hiring, firing, compensation, compliance. It sounds like there's a lot of workflows and tasks that we used to do that maybe are a little bit more streamlined and easier. Maybe we can go through the panel real quickly and share a task that used to be a pain in the neck and now is pretty easy for you.
Yeah, I mean, the most obvious one to me is when you're having those performance discussions and you're setting up performance improvement plans and it's looking like it's not going to work out. You've got to do a lot of documentation around that. So being able to record those calls and have notes taken and just have that be totally automated, and then you can go back and clean it up. Really allows you to focus more on the conversation that you're having with the individual and
be present.
Be very present, which is important too in those conversations too, because you can't forget the human element of the people that are involved. So that's probably the most obvious one for me. Yeah.
So my favorite is using the large language models. So for creating job descriptions, policies, even crafting emails that have to be very carefully crafted for compliance reasons. So
You get to wear your lawyer hat for a little bit, right?
yes, you
Okay.
actually prompt with, as an expert HR
Yeah.
or as an employment lawyer,
Yeah.
how would you
Pretend
answer
you're
this question?
Saul from Breaking Bad or something.
Yeah, exactly. So I spend a lot of time in meetings and they're productive, but the note-taking feature in my to-do list being created after those meetings has saved me hours and hours every single week. So, and I get more done too. I have time to actually do the work that's coming out of the meetings if I don't have to continually take notes all the time and make checklists.
I agree with all their statements there. I have a story. We have a client right now that it's a 100-person organization in the United States, and they have a CHRO, and he's the only person that's running HR in their organization. So they had a pretty robust system, but they didn't use all the capabilities with it. So when they came to us, they wanted to automate a lot of their processes. And shameless plug for Trinet, they're evaluating Trinet, and they fell in love with the platform. But one thing that they fell in love with, he had a pain point, and it was a lot of his employees are on H-1B visas. So they all have a lot of unique I-9 discrepancies and issues and variances. And for them, he wanted to automate that. And in Trinet, it's real simple. He was notified. Now he's notified 30 days in advance, like, hey, this person's employment documents are they're going to expire soon. Their I-9 has to be renewed at this certain date. So he doesn't have to deal with fire drills randomly, and he gets to now just work.
That's beautiful. You get right back to the good stuff. It's interesting, Abdullah, you mentioned a 100-person team. Maybe even a couple years ago, it would take hundreds, if not thousands, of people to get that same amount of work done. Dario Amodei from Anthropic recently said a couple things. One of which is that in 2026, we're going to see the first billion-dollar company run by one individual. And he also said, within the next couple of years, we're going to see half of the entry-level white-collar jobs wiped out. Or I guess I should say replaced. Are jobs safe? What is safe? How do we stay ahead of the curve here? And that's just whoever wants to hop in here.
So from an HR perspective, I've always been a sole HR contributor, department of one. I think it just moves a lot of people who have strong experience and expertise and background in a field to stay in that field and become more productive, right? Because we're doing less of the administrative and more of the one-on-one employee engagement or benefits, leave management, things that can't necessarily be done by the AI at this point, right? So we're going to do those things one-on-one and with the human side of it. So.
That's got to be helpful from an attrition perspective too, because they say that AI is replacing the dirty, the dull, and the dangerous, and that means we'll be having more fun with our jobs, which means we're gonna feel more creative and stick around longer as well. Yeah. What about anybody else here?
I think it's a horrible time to be a young professional graduating from college.
Unless you're building your own company.
Unless you're building your own company.
So it's a little column A, little column B. Exactly.
Right. You
Yeah.
said that, go ahead and
the
disagree.
caveat.
I think with that Anthropic quote, you've got all of these entry-level jobs, more applicants, less jobs, AI agents, bots, all those things that were traditionally more entry-level, how you get your initial first bit of experience while you're learning. I think the people who have been in career longer in specific fields are going to become more valuable because they're going to have, to your point, you could have a CHRO of a decent-sized company running all of it with the AI tools and the automation of the workflow. So I think I think there's going to be some instances where people who are a little bit later in their career are going to become more valuable because they have that experience that they can bring to bear. And then I also think that there's just certain types of jobs where they talk about writing contracts, they talk about accounting, and a lot of those things where the information changes year from year, but really when you're applying a set of rules to certain situations, like take taxes, like a lot of that should just be completely automated. So I think you're going to see whole professions that are going to be irrelevant.
Yeah, and maybe that means that the fractional employee that role will maybe get more attention. How do you think that's going to impact business?
We have to rethink the workforce because we're leaving out the entry level.
Yeah.
And we're going to move away from internships into maybe apprenticeships, where you're actually going to have to shadow the experienced people, and they will be doing the AI prompting and using the AI tools, and then learning from the experienced people. Otherwise, we're going to have a really sorry growth in workforce.
Yeah.
And I think we have to leave room for all the new jobs that'll be created too, like even titles that we don't, roles we don't even know about today. It's exciting to think about things that haven't even been created yet, that we'll see, roles for people coming into the workforce, people later in their careers. Being open to that, I think, is important.
Jackie, I'm really glad you mentioned that because, historically, when a company invests and gets 20, 30, 50x ROI on something, they're not going to stop, right? That creates more revenue, more opportunity, more growth. So I think it's kind of like a lot of the folks who say like AI is going to take all of our jobs. For me, it almost feels like they've got their head stuck in the sand as opposed to looking at this change. And we are in a chapter of change. Like nothing about the space that we're in right now is normal. But all of that represents opportunity, at least from my mind. When we look at HR and how AI is changing that entire space across these verticals, what other kind of opportunities do you think will present themselves in the next 6, 12, 18 months? Abdullah, let's hear from you.
One thing I want to call out on the last topic that we had was a lot of people are talking about how entry-level jobs are going to go out and there's not going to be a lot more employment for people coming in. I do think that there's going to be a pivot and there's going to be a lot more smaller businesses, a lot of small organizations where a company of 10 to 15 that would be able to do the job of 100 or 200 people with the implementation of AI, a lot of these companies will be flat. Everyone will be an individual contributor, but they're going to be a subject matter expert and a driver of the business. And a lot of people will be using AI to do that, right? To make, smart decisions, to roadmap the future. So while we might not see enterprise level corporations bring on entry level people at the rate that they have been in the last 15, 20 years, we are going to see a lot of bootstrap businesses that will be contributing and generating a lot of revenue, but in a different way.
Can we stay there for a second longer? How are you looking at content and distribution? I mean, you're doing a panel right now. This is pretty cool. But how are you thinking about storytelling as a small business now and moving forward?
Storytelling in what regard?
The problem you're solving, who you're solving for, and how you're different.
Just one thing that comes to mind is a lot of the larger corporations, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be outsourcing and they're not trying to have a pretty heavy footprint even within their organization. So a lot of these boutique agencies and smaller companies will be able to step in and handle specific things for organizations. So their story would be to help, alleviate these large corporations and help them drive to their goals, but they'll be, solution providers for them. So that's just the first thing that comes to mind.
For sure. So far more entrepreneurial.
I think so a lot. Yeah, a lot.
Lots of mini companies with fractional, and the problem that we're going to have with solution problem we're going to have with fractional type organizations is people are going to have multiple jobs and work on projects instead. Now we've got to solve for, well, you've got your compensation coming in from multiple projects, multiple companies, or you're being a consultant. How do we deal with benefits? Where do you get your 401k from? Where do you get your healthcare? Your healthcare, all your benefits. Where are they coming from? So.
Or just get completely paid in tips.
And
right?
we're all global,
so it's not tax.
There you go.
Yeah,
But
I'll
then
take
also,
cash.
exactly. Completely global and completely remote. We can work anywhere, which is fantastic. But then that crosses the line again for HR for compliance issues.
Okay. Yep.
So let's dive a little bit deeper into the compliance thing, because like on some tasks and roles and responsibilities, humans reign supreme. But other times AI can really shine. Where do you see the demarcation between that? What spaces should AI not touch at all, do you think?
I think when we're talking from a staffing standpoint, and if you're thinking about a recruiter, someone who's a job seeker, and the person in the business who's ultimately hiring the person, I think there's a whole bit of emotional intelligence and just nuance that humans still, maybe it will get there eventually, but that there's just no replacement for that. How do we connect? How do we talk? Do we, the culture fit in the organization? Are you gonna fit in with a group of humans? The AI piece and where to plug that in. I mean, there's just so much new tech coming out all the time, but in some ways, the use cases for that are becoming more and more obvious by industry.
Like,
but it's
you mean like biometrics or?
no, I mean more like just where what is your phrase? The ugly, the dirty,
the dirty, the dull, and the dangerous.
dirty, the
Which
dull.
sounds
and the
like it could
dangerous.
be a Clint Eastwood movie.
Yeah, it
maybe?
really does.
I
It
don't
really
know.
does. Yeah. So I think those things are somewhat obvious, and there's just ways that we all have already mentioned to save time and be able to dig deeper. But I just think that emotional intelligence, when you're making hiring decisions, I think that's going to be one thing that AI is not going to be able to replace.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, I think the pieces that the cultural pieces too, like your mission, your vision, your values, incorporating that into everything you do. I don't think AI can do that for you. I think it can't change it cannot. The employee experience is about whom you're working with and what it feels like to work with and the interactions that you have. And I don't think AI can replace that, how we interact with each other in a way that makes us feel.
For engineers, you can give them a test and see if they're able to execute on that, like a mini project of sorts. I guess that's a little trickier, well, outside of the more technical work. Maybe, by the way, I don't have an answer for this, but I'm thinking like, how could we test somebody in an interview to kind of gauge their efficacy, to gauge their success in the future role?
Depends on the role type. We do that all the time for clients, where it's if they're going to be like in a channel partner setting working with, say, Microsoft, and they're working with their startup organization. We have a large group of people that work at Microsoft focused on startups in a one-to-few model. And they, there's some templatized communications that, AI wrote that they send out, but there's still like steps and processes and things. And so you're testing for attention to detail. You're saying, if you receive this sample email, how would you respond?
Delete.
Yeah, well, that's what everybody wants to. But so it's sort of, there are tests that you can give to say, in this fake problem, how would you respond?
Okay.
Like without AI, maybe you give them a piece of paper and a pencil in a room. How would you respond?
I kind of like that, actually. So my dad worked at Lockheed for 30 years, and he said when he would go through the hiring process, the first hour would be all softballs, getting to know them. And then halfway through, for the second hour, it'd be like deep and technical and pointed questions. And I was like, that's kind of like a little sneaky. He's like, no, because like you want to get to know the person and how they're going to be able to operate under pressure. Because it's easy for people to behave and do well when it's smooth sailing, so to speak. Yeah. Speaking of which, hiring is arguably one of the most important challenges. In fact, I read a book a couple years ago, New York Times bestseller called Who. It said that it's the biggest opportunity as well. And we want to be hyper specific, metric driven, transparent. Also, you can kind of set them up for success. So Abdullah, what were the first couple hires of your team, and how are you thinking about building culture?
Leveraging technology for sure. Being able to, build your mission and your vision, but also incorporating that into technology so you have safeguards in place to kind of make sure everyone keeps the path, at front of their mind at all times. But for me, it was really simple. I think there's so much value in when you're recruiting to have that face-to-face value. You could talk about technology all you want. AI will be, I think, in that level, it'll be a really good add-on, and it'll provide a lot of data when you're interviewing with folks, where you get a lot of insight as to their responses and things of that. It'll give you a lot of data where you could then make conscious decisions on your hires. You'll know how they're answering your questions. At what level of comfort they are when they're speaking to you in regards to different stuff. So for me, I still find so much value in all my first early hires. That's what it is. Like, who are you? What do you bring to the table? This is our mission. How do you align with that? So it's a very unique space.
What about over here? When making hires, what's a good way to kind of gauge what's going to work for the company? I mean, it helps to know a little bit about the missions and values and all the rest, but that can be kind of tricky to judge when you're sitting in front of a stranger for the first time, right?
It can be, but I mean, I think, well, preparation's part of it. It's amazing how many people go into interviews without thinking that through. But the idea of like, give examples. What's important to your company, and feed that back. Sort of, plant that for fit and for understanding.
Yeah, well put. And in fact, Abdullah, I thought it was interesting you mentioned guide rails, because actually they're building that into models as well. In fact, there's so many parallels into how we think as humans, as how these models are being raised, right? Not necessarily even built, but if we think of like machine learning, which is kind of like one node updating the next based on weights, which was kind of like software 2.0. The first was like command line media, and then we've got these deep neural networks that are constantly informing and updating. So it is pretty fascinating, like how much we can learn from ourselves and the brain, and then build models that ultimately have a lot of value in the workspace as well. So Kate, you mentioned a little bit about this article, The Generation of Rejection.
Right.
I think it was.
Yep. I've got a couple quotes here just to make sure I get it
for
right.
Being prepared.
Yeah.
So share a little bit about that article, why you found it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it just outlines how rejection is now built into every stage of a young adult's life, like and how early you have to specialize. So starting from, I have two girls, 8 and 11, like the amount of there's a really super funny YouTube video out there somewhere of stand-up comedian talking about, kids traveling for sports, and how, as a business traveler, you're staying in the nicest hotel if there's a bunch of volleyball players there. So, I mean, the level of specialization, and for my 11-year-old daughter, who's a 6th grader, that happened during COVID in particular, where there were like rec soccer went away. Soccer, like club soccer was someone's job, and so that stayed, and it was outside. I mean, there are like her little friends, we're talking 12 trips a year getting out of school to go play soccer. I'm like, calm down. You're 11. Like, so
pump the brakes, have fun.
Right.
Yeah.
So these kids now, and even, people who are coming out of college, the weird pressure of specialization, from sports to academics to whatever it is, to pressure now. When I went into college, I don't know, I picked whatever major that my parents thought I should pick, and you changed it a bunch of times. Now, like, your major is part of your college application process. Yeah. So this pressure of specialization, I think, is really huge. And then they talk about just the rejection from sports. You don't make the sports team. You don't make, you apply to how many dozens of colleges, and how many do you get into? And then the job applications, like, that's gotten so much easier with AI to apply for many roles, which has caused problems with a lot of noise for the companies that are hiring and recruiters. My favorite story, this is from a while ago, before the whole, AI was driving a lot of this noise, but we had a forklift driver apply for a tech PM role.
Naturally. But
did
he get the job?
He did not. But,
okay.
But we did respond, and we did respond, like a funny response of like. Okay, good.
Maybe you should try to be a doctor.
I don't know. But there's a quote here about the number of a real interesting one. A viral LinkedIn post, 30 entry-level software engineer roles at Microsoft. The company received over 100,000 applications in 24 hours. So that's a problem created by AI that could also potentially be solved by AI. But think, like, to your point, what's still going to be out there for these young people? I just feel for them, because if you don't know someone, and you don't have an in, or you're not starting your company, and you're trying to get into that space, it's so hard to break through that noise.
It does feel like almost impossible.
Yeah.
I love how you mentioned a little bit about staying in the space of having fun.
Yeah.
In fact, we all know that there's these new models of all different shapes and sizes that are out now. And I heard recently that just vibe coding, which is basically using natural language to create software, it's only really been around for maybe like 6 months, give or take. But the idea is to have fun with it, like follow your passions. And it doesn't have to be something that you end up publishing per se, but when you've got a company like Lovable, which is they've been around for a year and a half, Stockholm-based, $10 billion market cap. And now they have a native integration to Supabase, which is a back-end infrastructure. Because if we think of like web and mobile products, it's like the front-end interface and then the back-end database, and sometimes like Stripe in between for payments and so on and so forth. But anyway, if you're using these new tools, try them out, have fun, follow your passion, follow your creativity, and that can get you more comfortable using these tools to maybe in like 6 months, 12 months, when they're far more ubiquitous, you'll have a lot of experience, right?
Yeah, so my mother, funny story there was my mother called me up one day, asked me to come over and help her with her computer like they do. And she said, my friends are telling me I shouldn't be using Google to look for things. I need to be using, something AI. Like, okay, what does that mean?
Tell me more.
Yeah. And so I thought, this will be fun. So I decided to pull up a large language model, and I was aware of the coding. I'm like, I'm going to create you an app. I'm going to create you a travel app. And I went in and said, please code me. And I went the whole thing, and this code came out. And then I panicked.
What have I done?
Yeah. What do I do now? Where do I go?
Mom's a developer now.
She's so excited. She's like, a travel app now? I'm like, yeah, it's really fun.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it's fun to play around in that.
You mentioned a little bit about the banking space and large language models. It does seem like we're in this kind of unique chapter where, like, of course, compliance is important, but information asymmetry is often where a lot of the value is created. So like back before, I forget the specific name of the act, maybe it was Sarbanes-Oxley. So you had to reach out by phone to the founder and ask the lady or the fella, say, what's your pipeline like? What are your margins like? And then kind of get a better understanding of whether or not it's a good investment vehicle. But now all that's available in 10Ks, 10Qs, the Edgar files, and so on and so forth. What about for banking, creating like a scraper that can find all of this and package it and provide you maybe a basket of ETFs or different vehicles that are, fall within your risk criteria? Or how are we thinking about LLMs in banking specifically?
So we don't. It's banking and it's highly regulated. So we're going to move really slow in banking, very slow. I'm very excited. Our CTO rolled out an agent for us so that we can learn for our ticketing system, and he's blooming that into how he can help the other organizations work with ticketing and on problem solving. But you're not going to see banks, especially we're a small boutique bank, that's going to roll into any AI right now.
Can I push back a little bit there?
Yeah.
Innovation is one of those things where if you don't lean into it.
Oh no, I totally agree. Remember from startups.
For
totally
sure.
So I can just tell you, working in an industry
the bridge there? How can you be the bridge to get the? I get it.
I am in the fact that I will come in with the template and the policies, and I'll say, large language model helped me out a lot with this. It made the job much faster. I was done with the job template and the policies in 2 minutes, and now we can actually discuss this policy and things like that. So yeah, I can to a certain degree, but when you're talking back end and scraping and things like that, a bank's going to go. Any financial institution is going to roll a little bit slower with technology.
I hear you. The reason I ask is
banks
because like productization could be to create something of a moat rather than like Abdullah, you had some thoughts here?
I work with a financial institution now, and while I can't speak on decision making for ETFs and mutual funds and things of that nature, but I could bring it back to HR. And what they've done is they've leveraged their intranet and they've created a chatbot where employees can go there for any question they have that's related to anything to their job description, to their workflows, to benefits, to PTO, whatever questions they have, they can go to that chatbot now. And that, I think, is something that it's like a low-hanging fruit for financial institutions. And it could be a really like a warm entrance into AI for them. And I'm not saying that they're going to adopt and things of that, but I'm seeing it even at that level, and it's it's low-hanging fruit, but it makes a major impact. HR teams now have less responsibilities. There's less emails going back and forth. talking to someone about, how many PTO days do I have, or if I broke my leg at work, how do I deal with it, or whatever. But obviously they deal with that, but
Go home.
big.
Gotcha.
But there's different introductions to soften the blow now, and I think we're seeing a lot more of that, even in heavily regulated industries.
Yeah, I think more companies can do that exact program, right? To offer that ability to go on from an HR perspective and find out all your benefits and things like that. But that then allows the HR person to have that very strategic conversation with the employee. I broke my leg. What leaves are available to you through the company and through the state or wherever you are living? So
Great point.
Yeah.
But I think it's so interesting, like all of this is true, right? This is just an example of how different companies are at different spaces. So lots of clients that I talk to are in the, I'm embracing AI, I'm an AI company, to like, I'm afraid of it. Like I don't want employees even to be using it. And they're not talking about it, or they're making decisions behind closed doors, and so employees are fearful of it. I think it's for AI in a lot of companies, there's a lot of friction and there's a lot of mystery. So it's just such a great example, right? You're using it to do your role, yet then you work in an industry that may not be ready to embrace it because of the regulatory. That's so much to look at it, right? There's so much at stake to use AI, correctly or in the wrong way in banking.
Not having that wall around that security of it, and I think that's where the fear is driven. So
which makes sense though, right? For it to be feared.
We mentioned the mystery and the friction. I think it like misfortune breeds opportunity, right? And in fact, these models, how they're getting constructed, is there's something of a scratch pad. In fact, we were talking about this before. So you can actually see how the model is using reasoning, or how it's thinking to itself. And what these engineers are doing, they're saying, give us every single step of your reasoning process, so they can kind of see how it's processing. However, that's assuming that the model trusts the engineer. Like, what happens when they want to hide some information or give false information? The scratch pad, which is kind of like the inside processing element, there are certainly concerns. But we know that that's coming, right? I think it's the things that catch us by surprise that tend to have like the biggest negative downstream impact. But I guess I'm curious, from an HR perspective, where will the new roles and responsibilities shift? Because some things will change and become less necessary. What does HR look like in the next 6 to 12 months?
The amount of questions that come in, to your point of like having an agent that you can just go and ask questions, like your own internal company's AI agent, I guess, for information, like taking all of that off the plate, taking all of the note-taking off the plate. There is HR is some of the hardest working people, and
underappreciated in a lot of cases.
Underappreciated, feared. I mean, all of it. I'm not officially an HR person, but I work very closely with our HR person. The amount, that's another thing that will be really interesting to see AI over time and how that comes into play, because the amount of off-the-wall, always different things they're dealing with from a human perspective when humans are behaving badly.
Oh, well, they never do that.
Yeah, sometimes it's fun when they do, and sometimes it's really not fun. So I just feel like there's going to be more time for that, because there is already a lot of that, and so I feel like they're just going to have more time to focus on that. And then to your point, like being strategic and how do we work more on company culture to get people, the really smart humans that we have, want to stay here, and what are the different things that we can be doing from every angle of organizational development and retention, really, and good attrition.
Well, that's a great point. And you mentioned earlier the PIP, right? The Performance Improvement Plan,
Yes,
I think it was.
yes.
Can we share some, no names of course, but can we share some juicy stories of when people cause trouble, and then maybe some fun stories?
I can just tell you that there are 2 haiku poems that I wrote from some crazy emails that I got from someone on our HR. And I was like, I'm sorry you're dealing with this. Here's a gift.
We'll include those in the show notes.
Yeah.
Cool. Good deal. Well, do you want to save some time for the audience here too? We've got a bunch of great folks. So yes, please go ahead.
I have 3 interns working for me, and including 4 actually. She's now in a really advanced school. I don't want to name her name because she was a minor when she started working for me. Uh, Amazing. Okay, they did not know their limitations. Okay, so I'd say, can you put this together? Okay, and next day it's done. They have no idea that what they did was 6 months worth of work.
Right.
And so I'm giving them directions, but they are moving at a pace that even I can't comprehend.
Let me clarify. It's not a question of talent. It's a question of people versus number of slots at some of these questions.
So opportunities.
Yeah. So it's not a question of talent. This article that I mentioned, we're the most rejected generation. There's even like just talking about even the kids from these prestigious Ivy League schools having a hard time, or they're going to consulting or other like safe. They're not following their passion. To your point, they're picking what they think is safe, where they can go get a job.
And maybe your example is the good example of the opportunities that, that can be now that couldn't have been in the past. So newer roles that we couldn't have predicted.
One other question which revolves around the banking stuff, but have you thought about HR actually? Like when I used to join a large company, hardest problem was picking out what investment choices I was making. Okay, like, do I want VIX or do I want this or how much percentage or this and that? What's my long-term goal? Did you ever get a chance to?
Yeah, capital allocation. How do we figure out what's the
So
right?
wouldn't you use, I mean, there's so many AI tools. As a consumer, you would be able to do that on your own, right? And then take that to a fiduciary or to someone that could help you with financial analysis. Say, hey, this is what's bubbling to the top, or what, and it goes back to the point where we were talking about having conversations. I'll get into an actual conversation back and forth with the LLM, like, no, wait a minute, that's not where this is going. Start over. Let's do this, and then it comes right back at me. So you would direct. I would think as a consumer, there's going to be lots of different AI things coming and tools like that that you could use, but then you would take that right to someone to talk about it further and what they offer.
So would you offer that as an HR service, or you would reflect it to go find your ChatGPT?
I don't think it falls in the category of HR.
I do ask you that question all the time. What's my investment pick?
Oh, you're talking about for your 401k?
Yeah, like a 401k pick.
benefit?
I think there are retirement providers who have integrated
so-
that.
Yeah, we
mean,
actually utilize, most of the companies I've been at, we actually utilize outside fiduciaries that are paid through the plan, through the 401k plan, that you can call and talk to, and they will walk you through all the investments that they're offering, and then what might be best for you, the difference between a targeted fund and
I felt that was a useless service.
yeah.
I feel like the Trinet people have something to say about this. Don't
Yeah.
you guys have a
sure there is.
401k?
Yeah, we do. I mean, with a partner, with a partnership with that.
No,
Yes,
we're
that help
talking
with that.
I know they do.
What's been most is you're diving in and you're sharing all this information across employees and everything. And so something can impact the answer which another employee has asked. Are there any privacy boundaries? Because if you took the solutions they're looking at into Europe, you get hacked or record.
Yeah,
The moment
GDPR.
You said no, you have to delete every reference, and you need to, if you use any information to change your model, you need this permission.
Right.
Well, that's mud on the racetrack from my perspective. But actually, that brings up a good point. When we look at build versus buy, maybe 6-12 months ago, a lot of these off the rack models would work, and they require some fine tuning. But now it looks as a lot of these models are being brought in house to be built natively. How are you all thinking about the build versus buy dynamic?
I'm pretty biased because I spent a long time in tech sales in my career. And so there can be some build versus buy, but I do think when you bring in someone who is selling something that's sort of out of the box that can be modified, what you're also getting in most cases is basically some free consulting. So if you're, to your point, you kind of know what needs to be done, but then you're diving a click deeper to try to determine what are these few things that I should be using as my decision matrix. So if it's close in cost, I also think people get really lost in, this is my major pet peeve lately, like price versus value. I think we forget that a lot about, well, this might cost less to build it build it natively, but the value I might get by bringing someone else in and the additional sort of free consultation and continual support that I have for someone else to be another human to deal with this, to help me scale, versus me having to always solve and fine tune this. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's also something you need to determine. And the answer is going to be different for every company, with the unique group of people that you have there, and their different expertise is going to be like a big part of it, which also comes back into hiring. When you're looking at these people and talking about what AI can't do, and there's some of these intangible things. So you have whatever your preferred AI model is, right? The job. Thank God, because I need like a really strong PM. I'm like, can you give me anything more?
Yeah.
Anything? No? Okay, we're gonna just do this like 25 rounds of it. Okay. Okay. But the intangibles of where you're like, these are the non-negotiable things, this is what I need, but then you're really listening to someone, and there's like, they'll throw in the other maybe nice to haves, but you can bring into these people. One of my other favorite stories is this guy that I used to work with at Microsoft, is at AWS. We're catching up having coffee. And I'm like, so you got a big team now, you're hiring, like, how's that going? Tell me, I've heard all about the bar raiser and the interview process and all this stuff. And he's like, I made the weirdest hire about 6 months ago, and it's the best hire I ever had. I'm like, tell me more about that. And he's like, I hired someone who was a marine biologist, and she is the rock star of my team.
No way.
Yeah.
How cool.
So there's these non-traditional career paths and other intangible things that humans can like dig into, or there's people who you're talking to that are amazing storytellers. And maybe you don't realize until you're talking to that person, that moment, that that's what you need.
Yeah, because that's going to be increasingly more important.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of that is lost in we have this great ATS, we use Workable, it's Scrap, like, this is a 90% match to this, but then you're like, oh, I know that person. They're a wackadoodle. We're not. No, that's
Sometimes they
worked
can
for
be
us
fun.
before. Yeah.
I guess we have a question from the. Oh yeah.
So the question is more about the opportunities. We have been talking a lot about less opportunities for entry level and all of that, but about the current middle level to senior level opportunities. There is an ambiguity around relevance of roles, right? We were talking about, okay, this role might be obsolete in the next 6 months, and like you said, there might be roles we still don't know that. So do you feel and think that companies might shift towards offering or taking up more contractual roles versus full-time opportunities? Or maybe the opposite, they would want, not the opposite, but they would maintain the current full-time employment ratio, and whatever future hiring they would do, they would lean towards contractual because they don't know if the role that they're hiring for particularly would be relevant in, say, the next year or so,
I think there's arguments for both. I'm totally following your question. I will say, so we place a lot of contractors that are W-2 employees of my company. But big companies and small companies. But some of we just did a direct placement hire for an healthcare outbound. I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be saying their name.
That's a free plug, whatever.
Okay,
Yeah.
we did a placement for an awesome startup, and they're a highly regulated industry because they're in healthcare. So I feel like healthcare and banking and some of those highly regulated industries, they're going to hire full-time employees. They're not going to hire contractors because there's too much risk to that for them. So other situations, and more in the less regulated areas, I feel like there's a lot of advantage to doing the contractor route. And some of them, the smaller companies, oftentimes those will work into full-time positions. They can do a contract to hire position. But I mean, the biggest tech companies out there, they have tons of contractors. So I think that's a great way if you can get your foot in the door. The contract roles that we place are mostly not tech roles. And so I find that they're not a good fit for entry level, maybe even mid level, but by and large, a contract position at a large tech company, they want someone who's done that exact thing before at either that company or a similar company, which makes the pool a little bit small. But I do think it could go either way. We've seen in the past when there's been large layoffs, the work typically doesn't go away. And so everyone's like really fearful about their job and are they going to get cut? And then everybody gets really fed up and they're like, I'm not doing 3 people's jobs. Like, I'll go find something else. So you hire me some contractors to come and support me or take the work away.
Comes in waves, I guess, right?
Comes in waves. So we've seen that trend. What's been really interesting lately is with some of the layoffs that have been happening, I think AI has been brought in to replace some of that work. And so there has been the typical tick up in hiring contract workers to support the full-time employees hasn't been happening as much. Or they're just, some of these big companies are just saying, we just no longer do this anymore, which is a total paradigm shift from the past.
And I think regulations make that trend too. So right now, we're in a more of a friendly environment to hire independent contractors at a federal level, but state by state that can change. And so I have watched that as an HR practitioner really just evolve over time, that the political climate influences what you see regarding independent contractors versus employees.
Well, and then there's independent contractors, and then like our organization, we work with some of these large tech companies. You cannot have a 1099 independent contractor.
Right.
There's too much legal risk for that. So that's why people are a W-2 employee of our company and have 401k, all the benefits, and they're placed there. So we then own the risk, but it is a contract agreement.
I'm going through the same journey, so that's why I think it's when has AI shifted the mentality that this particular role is going to go obsolete, but if AI replaces it, we need somebody to kind of do an audit thing that if it's doing it in the intended way or not. So AIs tend to hallucinate, and it's the quote unquote, what the creators are saying that we, he's in a podcast by Sam Altman was like, it's funny and it's weird how much trust we are putting into AI.
Yeah.
I think there are many roles that are more supervisory of how an AI is performing, and like you said, the specialists will kind of kick in then be like, oh, you know what, this is wrong. In my experience, this might backfire in the long run.
Lot of trust, that's for sure. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, well, in first comment, the robots wouldn't have fixed the light that fast.
Yeah.
So great job, team.
Round of applause for the team fixing the light. Go here.
No, I think the interesting thing about kind of entry level comment and then what you guys shared about new opportunities, I kind of think you're both right. Obviously, there's going to be some friction as these modes change. I do think that there's going to be new opportunities. I think you cited a great one. It's kind of smaller businesses bootstrapping up, and also things that we don't even know yet. If you could give advice to folks in like entry level to mid career about the types of skills that they can develop outside of school or maybe through school that'll help them prepare for what you kind of see coming down the line to kind of capture those opportunities and be ready. Any advice there?
I would advise somebody to try to not become a trick of all trades or like a jack of all trades kind of person, but become well versed in a lot of things. But time is of the essence here. You can't become an AI expert overnight. You can't become an expert in any specific field overnight. Try to find 1 or 2 different things to try to like learn and kind of build your skill set on. A lot of organizations now are flatter, right? There's not an in-depth org chart with 4 layers of middle management that you were talking about. Individual contributors are the subject matter experts. So you're gonna do more. We're process driven now. It's not just, you're not in one small niche. Try to learn more, broaden your horizons. HR as an example, HR personnel used to be, hey, I'm in charge of benefits management, I'm in charge of payroll processing, whatever it is. Now everyone can do everything simply because you have technology to guide you, but it's also on you to like learn it. It's on you to go get the certifications and do the self-directed learnings that are in these different platforms and just become a domain expert. The best way to build value is to show your employer or your company that, hey, I can be a solution. I could find solutions for you. And over time they'll start to see that, and just slowly, bit by bit, try to enhance your skill sets, especially if you're in that early career to mid-level where you're still trying to figure out what the end goal is for you. But that was a really good question.
Hi. Also, to that point, you have a lot of people entry-level people want to get into recruiting. And so with a lot of those entry-level type of opportunities that are going to be moving into moving into AI, how do you guide those individuals who want to be recruiters these days? Because those type of roles are going to be moving into AI. How do you guide them into taking on responsibilities to help educate or train them to, be a recruiter, to be a junior recruiter and senior recruiter and on?
That's not advice I would give anyone to go into talking about jobs that might be going away, and a lot of people that are unemployed that used to do that and do it really well. There have been so many efficiencies when it comes to, you can have a call with someone, the notes are recorded. Like, the recruiters can do more with the AI tools. I mean, it's a great first job, or it used to be anyway, for a lot of reasons. One is you're recruiting for roles across the organization, so you get a really interesting viewpoint across the entire organization, from, the marketing team to people who are, super techie, and you have to understand and learn enough to know what it is that they're looking for so you can go out and find that talent. But I'm not sure, like, that would probably be one of the jobs that if it was, my niece or my friend's kid or something, I would probably steer them in a different direction. But then here's the other thing. I'm a big believer in the Strength Finders philosophy. Has anyone read that book, Strength Finders?
Yeah.
Okay, it's a little old school. But the whole theory there is find out what you are really, really good at and double down on that. Don't necessarily go try to figure out, like, I'm probably not ever going to be someone that's going to be able, I mean, I tried. I spent like 2 hours. I was looking at YouTube videos. I was trying to figure out how to create a bot to go do something for me. And I was just like, I'm easier every day.
Just wait a little while. You'll be able to.
This is a next month problem. So anyway, but I feel like there are certain things that we all have natural talents at. And if you, well, you do need to be well-versed and versatile enough to be able to understand things across the organization and to understand enough to go solve problems. I do think really kind of sticking to what you're good at, and then you're going to be able to, like, run circles around other people who aren't good at things. And sometimes it's hard when you're good at something, you don't, like, realize you're good at it. And till someone else points it out to you that, like, oh, I would never go do that. Like, even networking events and things, I love going to networking events. And there's our HR gals on the board of the Society for Human Resource Managers in the Seattle area, and she's like, I need you to come as my emotional support unit. So there's just these different little things that I think we all forget about ourselves that we're good at. And I think it's also, that's another good North Star, to be like, don't forget about what you're really good at and getting even better at it.
The flip side of that too is, so Simon Sinek says that teams working together, that process and people contributing and feeling like they're contributing is just as important as the work that actually gets done. So if you do double down on the thing you're good at and find somebody who compliments you, that's magic. Like, that's teamwork. And then it's emotionally easier because you can, shoulder the heavy weight of building a company as well. Yeah.
I wouldn't go so far as she did. She is a recruiter, I'm not. But in not being in that recruiter space, because AI is used in that space more than in the other areas of HR right now. There's more regulations around it. They're going to clamp down on how hard you can use that for hiring practices because of bias. There's a bill out there right now, SB 7, which is no robo bosses, that's in front of the Senate. There's an assembly bill. There's a lot of, California is going to take a harder look at AI and how it plays into the recruiting, because that's kind of where
it's for good reason.
Yes, and that's where it's all being Yeah, the AI is focused on right now. It was an easy.
Yes, if she loves it and she's super excited about it, I can't believe I just said super excited. I just feel like someone should slap me for saying that. If she's like, I'm all in on that, then like go for it. But use the learning that you have. If it goes away, then you're gonna, there's a lot of people that are gonna have to pivot. So I'm also sure that we don't need to all be running scared about deviating from our path because of the what if, and because if you read this article that I read, I haven't too much New York Times lately, but I'm trying to like read not about politics, which then is like pretty much
Impossible.
technology.
Yeah, it's like all kind of the same ball of wax. Right?
If you don't have enough anxiety in your life and you need a little more,
watch the news.
Forecast for 2027 total AI domination. It was back in May, an article, and I was like, I really didn't need to read that, but then I told everyone I knew to read it.
Sure. That's great.
Yeah.
So yes, another question here, please.
Yeah, I wanted to ask the group to kind of do some speculation a little bit. So in the past, with the Industrial Revolution, Technology Revolution, I think the AI revolution is a little different because I think in those past times, it was easier for people to reskill and make that move. So I have a two-part question for you. Is one, do you agree that in the AI age, it requires more education and more effort and more cost in order to pivot into the new jobs that are going to be created? And part two of that question is, and if so, where does that responsibility lie so that we don't have mass disruption in the workplace and therefore mass disruption in the economy?
Wow.
I think that employers right now should be helping their employees upskill. I think they should be figuring out what their employees are good at. I think they should be helping them learn about AI and other topics. I think it's so incredibly important. I think other skills like communication and change management are huge right now. Like and I'm encouraging our clients to like teach their employees those things. I feel like that's where that lies. I do think that there's some employer responsibility in helping employees find what's next for them if they believe that their roles are vulnerable to AI. And I think us really just as workers need to be thinking about that too.
Don't you see a difference between upskilling and reskilling for the jobs that will go away?
I think it all lives in there. I think it's like whatever you want to call it, maybe a little bit of semantics. I think it's about learning new skills or getting better at the skills you already have. But I think we all need to be thinking about it, doing it, not just thinking about it. Like it's time for action. Yeah.
You're familiar with the adoption curve? Right? So if we're talking from TV to cell phone so yes, the internet, the next one, right? And then you're going to go with AI. Yes, it's very rapid. Is it as fast as what they're saying? I don't know, but it's going to be faster and hit us faster than anything. I think people have to be very careful. I have children that are semi-adults, will be fair, and they're just don't want the extra stuff. It's too burdensome. If I sit down, I will sit down with one of my younger ones and say, I have this great idea for an AI app, but I don't know all the steps. Can you fill in the blanks? Because he's huge technology, and it's too much. It's too much. I don't want to take on more in that space, and yet I'm trying to push him to do so because he's going to need that skill set. And I find that weird that I'm here saying, please go out, learn it. I'll stand by you because I know the pieces that I want to build, but I don't necessarily know all the pieces within the technology to do it. And he's like, that means I have to go learn this. Like, you're on the computer 24 hours a day, all night, gaming, all these different things, but you don't want to take on the extra technology burden.
What's causing that reticence, do you think?
It's overwhelming.
Yeah.
Too much information all the time.
Notifications.
And maybe I just want to relax to use technology and not always have it come into. It's weird. I have two children that are doing that right now that I'm like so excited. Let me go learn this. And how do I go over here? And I'm like, oh. How about your friends hit me up? This isn't working. My own kids won't help me.
As HR professionals, you've heard the rhetoric that the folks who are in college now are training for jobs that don't even exist yet. Yeah. So from a recruiting perspective, it's kind of interesting. How does one prepare for jobs that you don't know are going to be necessary? And B, as a recruiter, how do you recruit? Because usually history is what we use, right? I want someone who's worked in that industry and that job and done it before. How do you recruit for an entirely new wave of jobs?
Go on a large language model and you ask AI, what are the jobs of the future? And here's my
That's an
skill
excellent,
set.
that's an excellent
Actually,
point.
that is what I would do first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you hire for the need you have now.
Yeah. You say, this is what I'm really good at. This
Yeah.
is where I want to go. That's what I would do.
That was an underhanded one.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot. I think there's going to be more shift into the trades too if you talk about speculation. I mean, that's sort of also a softball obvious thing, but I do think that that's my husband's from Alaska, and you know, that's always been a thing up there, but they're way ahead of the curve in some regards. They have you can go to high school that you basically, by the time you're out, you've completed part of your apprenticeship as being an electrician or a plumber.
Wow.
You know, I think all of that stuff I think people are going to, I think there's going to be less white collar jobs as like the path that white collar parents are pushing their kids. They might say, well, you know.
In much the same way that education is shifting as well.
Yeah. I've been brainwashing my kids since they could know what it was that they're going to be orthodontists when they grow up, because I feel
With the
like
best of
that's like,
intentions.
yeah.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, it's going to be a short question, but thanks for doing this. Sorry I missed the beginning. It was crazy to come down from the North Bay to here. But I work a lot with early stage startups and doing hiring roadmaps. Mostly it's the startup scaling over from Europe. So they have like a small team and they're going to do fundraising here, obviously, because they want to fundraise here and grow the team here. And I ended up being debates with investors a lot around how much virtual headcount and how much real headcount we put into the hiring roadmap. So can you tell me, in your opinion, where should I either look for information or what you think should be for each role a ratio for the virtual versus, real headcount? So give an example, in sales, we ended up doing 50-50. So you onboard a salesperson with a chatbot, obviously we will miss if you don't. In marketing, it's pretty obvious that it's maybe 2x. With development, maybe one chatbot for every developer. And I don't know what to tell the investors here in Silicon Valley of nobody really knows how many chatbot you're going to have for a one person 3 years out or 5 years out. So can you tell me what your opinion is, and anybody in the audience, if you have any experience of where you think this is heading from a ratio point of view, real headcount versus virtual? Thank you.
That's a really good question. I don't know if I have an answer for you
Yeah.
on that one. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Really tough.
That's a really
Yeah.
hard one.
I agree. Tough. I wish I had a good answer for you. I mean, we're
So to the investor, we're
Yeah.
debating on something we didn't know. It's kind of crazy.
It's got to be cultural, right? Like Jensen from NVIDIA says, I don't care where you are, just get the work done. Other times it's really important to have like this kind of like in-person powwow, kind of brainstorming, collective working together kind of thing. So I would guess it's probably cultural.
But you're thinking like agents to human.
agency. Yeah.
Yeah, chatbots.
Yeah.
No. I can answer the remote one. That I feel like I could. Yeah.
Yeah.
But not like yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how you debate with facts, because those facts don't necessarily exist yet. And I don't know, I think companies are still so early in all of that they don't have I feel like you just have to like A/B test it, really. I mean,
You probably have the best data from the work that you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Investors don't believe that.
Yeah.
So there's a stock.
yeah.
Debating it should be 5 agents for one person. And like, I don't think it's going to be maybe 3-1. And
What's the cost of the agents?
so
Yeah.
that was kind of harsh. And there's really no data. Thanks for recognizing that. So
Yeah.
I think it was come down and ask.
Yeah. But what's the cost for the agents? So I'm not tech native.
A couple of $100 per month and the salary.
So what's the downside on having extra agents that you don't use?
Well, NVIDIA has an agent that's like 20,000 a month, so it does kind of tend to vary.
Yeah.
I know there's new companies like Manus, MANUS, Chinese company that is doing really cool work. In fact, in the demo, there's the chat screen, and then there's also like 5 different. There's like coding. There's the website. It's like you're seeing all of it live. So
Wednesday, I found it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Chinese company that recently was brought into under some fire because, or I guess there's American VCs that are investing, and it's like very kind of cutting edge. So Benchmark, in fact, Bill Gurley from Benchmark Capital had invested in them. They're like, wait a second, this is a national security issue potentially. So I don't know, it's all very fresh.
Yeah.
So I think we have a question from the audience as well.
Yes, we do. One question is, how do you control biases that the AI will create when narrowing down applicants applying for a position? And how do you cultivate a good company culture when you're outsourcing the vibe check to AI?
Biases. That's a tricky one.
Like I said, it's going to be regulated, so we're going to have to figure it out. We're going to have to really, it's a testing thing, right? Testing the AI that you're using to make sure that it meets the requirements and it isn't crossing those lines.
Yeah. And I think like really figuring out what problem you're trying to solve with whatever whatever AI software you're using for recruiting and focusing on that. I think that I'm seeing that, especially clients I'm talking to are quickly adopting AI technology without figuring out what question they're trying to solve, and they're getting into complexities regarding that. So I think especially around recruiting software, why are you using that recruiting software? What are you trying to solve? Start there.
I think it depends on the size of your company too, and how many jobs you're posting for. I mean, we have had more recently like people coming to us saying, like, I have so many applicants, I don't even know what to do with it. Can you just like old school source some people for us? And we're like, heck yeah. And I will also say I would love to. We've not like really done this yet because we're not deep enough in the AI. But I mean, there's like the JD match to applicants from your applicant tracking system, your ATS that it will scrape. But I would say so far every single time, like the sourcer talking to the person, looking at the job description and going out to LinkedIn and finding the people. And a lot of times, like there's people that we know, our company's been around long enough. We've had clients that become consultants that become clients. Like the sourcers always end up having the better person.
The vibe check.
The vibe check.
Mentioned earlier.
The vibe check. Yeah. If you have a really good recruiter, it's hard to replace. But I mean, then how do you scale? So I don't know.
But it's also important for people to ask better questions when they're investing in AI.
Yes.
LLMs were built for multiple purposes. I don't want to say generic, but not specifically for recruiting. And so when LLMs are built specifically for recruiting, they can take those types of biases into consideration and train it. So people need to ask, how is this LLM trained? It's not just how cool is the UI and how do I feel about it, but how is it really trained? Because if it's trained properly, we can eliminate a lot of the biases. And frankly, a lot of the bias also comes in the drafting of the job description itself.
Right.
So if you ask for a VP of engineering with 25 years of experience, what do you think you're going to get? You're going to get a very specific and draft.
Yeah. Yep. Yes. That's true. Yeah. And then like looking at the criteria and the qualifications, sometimes people don't push back enough. Like, do you really need 25 years of experience for that? Why? Tell me why.
It could be a hindrance maybe.
Yeah. The last, the first 15 of that's irrelevant. You want someone to talk about Cobalt and IBM and like, okay, maybe.
Great. So we have time for another question if we want somebody to hop in here. Wonderful. Well, great. Well, so thank you all for being here.